Hi everyone, salam sejahtera, selamat datang and welcome to program Jom Sembang Air or Let's Talk Water brought by Forum Air Malaysia, FOMCA and WeCamp. So if you want to know more about what they're doing, please check their Facebook and website. Maybe you would like to participate in some of their program. Oh, before I go further, Ramadan Mubarak. So those who are actually uh, fasting, I wish you a good fasting month and be safe. So back to the program. So this program is divided into 3 series and a total of 9 parts of panel discussion themed around dissecting water disruption. So during the first series that ran from 2nd March until 12th April, we have covered 4 panel discussion covering on unbundling water disruption, looking into social and economic impact. We looked at understanding water disruption and its causes. And now we are going to move forward into the second series, Back to Basic. They will have 3 panel discussions, and this will be the first panel discussion under second series, Back to Basics. And we're going to start off by knowing water cycle. So for this program, we have 2 interesting experts lined up. First is Dr. Kailasam from Global Environment Center. He's a river care manager. His background, he studied in National University Malaysia and he joined GEC in 2002. So GEC is doing a lot of fantastic work. So I really think that while you're listening to this conversation, you should go and check out their Facebook page, what they're doing. A lot of program involved and engaging with public. So that'd be an interesting thing to look at. And he actually coordinates a lot of work in relation to lake, river management, pollution control, environmental and education program. More than 20 years under his belt, working with public, river ecosystem management, and also a lot high dose of stakeholder engagement. So welcome Dr. Kalidasan for participating in our program. So we would love to hear more from you in a bit. And second panelist or expert is Associate Professor Engineer Dr. Zaki Zainuddin. He claims his areas of expertise only 2, water quality characterization and assessment, and water quality modeling. Tapi we all know, Dr. Zaki punya expertise is far more than that. He is someone that you must have seen many times all over the news, especially when there is a pollution incident. He will be the go-to person for public to know what is actually going on. So normally media get in touch with him. So we're really happy that Dr. Zaki is here. Thank you very much. And right now, Dr. Zaki is associate professor with International Islamic University of Malaysia under the Department of Biotech Engineering. And he is an active member of IEM and he has represented IEM under various capacity. Really, if I want to go on, but both of these experts, I think I'll take 1 hour, so I'm going to cut short on that. And today, both Dr. Zaki and as well as Dr. Kali will be talking about the water cycle in entirety, where does the water come from and where does it go after it leaves and what are the challenges, and really like touching into a core concept of understanding water itself. And when I talk about water here, it's not the water that you open and streams up from your tap. When we're talking about the water that actually produced or generated somewhere and ends up in your tap. So that's what we are going to have conversation about today. So first, do you know that right now there are in the whole world, 100% of the water that we have, 97% is actually adalah air laut. So barely 3% adalah fresh water, air yang kita boleh minum. And out of that 2.8% fresh water, less than 2.1% of the fresh water locked in ice and glaciers. Glaciers dekat Kutub Utara, Kutub Selatan, those kind of zones lah, ataupun Himalayas there, where all the salji is in. So that's where the fresh water is locked in. So we have very small amount, 0.7%, that is actually available as groundwater and surface water for the whole global population of 7.8 billion. So that is manusia, but it's not only manusia yang perlukan air. Every single living being, pokok, insects, mammals, all kind of animals, everything needs water as well. So these are the 0.7% of the water that we are sharing with all. And we all know or heard daripada we are young, we have been taught about water cycle. So how nirvanic is this beautiful water cycle is, that it condense, precipitate, transpirate, percolate, and then jatuh balik sebagai apa ni, air hujan. This is kita punya knowledge about air hujan. Tapi today I want to ask Dr. Kali, the common belief water falls from the sky. And scientifically, that's what we have been taught since we are young, right? From primary school, that's what we have been taught. Water falls from the sky, masuk sungai, kita ambil, kita guna, kita buang, masuk balik sungai, naik balik. Kepada langit, and then it become awan, and then jatuh balik. This is what we've been taught. So today we would like to hear from you. What is water cycle actually?
Okay, thank you. And it's a wonderful question to start with, so that we do understand about water and water cycle. So to start with, the first thing we need to know is water is life, water for life. Air adalah kehidupan, air untuk kehidupan. Okay, it's a basic need for all living things. Okay, and if you look into the chemical component, is the simplest molecule that made of 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, H2O. Okay, so it is inorganic, transparent, colorless, odorless, all these things, yet is vital for all living and also mankind on that. So as you mentioned, from the school itself, we've been exposed about this water cycle ataupun kitaran air. And we've been asked to memorize. I still remember when I was small, that is a question they asked. They put the circle and then asked to fill up what a term, the things, whether it's evaporation and so on. So what is water cycle is something simple like this, very easy, where as you know, the common facts that sometimes people aware, but they're not serious on that is water, although I say water is the simplest molecule, it cannot be created or destroyed. That's a very important point. It cannot be created or cannot be destroyed either. So therefore, only thing we can do is change from one stage, one form to another form. So from when it was ice, is in a solid form, and then it melt, become liquid, it become water, and so on. And then evaporate, it becomes steam, and so on, and come back, as mentioned there, evaporation, and then condensation, and then precipitation, come back. So it's all cycle, all this thing. And it's quite interesting because God created in such a way that, this is one of the earliest recycling process by nature. They actually clear and clean the polluted water. So although polluted water, it goes back, come as a supposed to be clean water, but unfortunately, because of the air pollution, it forms acidic rain and so on in certain places. So these are the basic things. When we say water cycle is a simple way how water can recharge and cleanse yourself through natural process. Okay. So that is the simple introduction for water cycle, kitaran air.
Okay, if that's the scenario, Dr. Kali, the impression is water cycle is actually very simple, very straightforward, and it also makes me feel water is in constant abundance, which we don't have to worry about, and it is an infinite source. So if that is the story, then why are we having all these stories about, I know, like now they are saying, the next world war will be because of water, not because of nuclear, not because of weapons. So, so what I mean, it sounds so simple and so easy. So it should be abandoned. It should be infinite. So what is the story here? Okay,
as you mentioned in your question itself, water is not infinite. Why? Although I say water cannot be created or destroyed, it changed from one form to another form. Unfortunately, when I say that, quantity-wise, it remains same forever. We are using same water that dinosaur, if you believe, or caveman, all the same. Quantity-wise, it remains same, but unfortunately, quality is the issue. Okay, because human being, we have a tolerant range that we cannot consume all the water. So when I was small, I'm still young, but when I was very young, okay, we used to drink water from the river. But can you dare to drink? Sometimes I also wondering whether I'm dare to drink the tap water. without any filter. Okay, I'm not saying anything bad about anyone here, but sometimes the piping system is on. So that is the thing. So the issue now is not quantity. Definitely the quantity will remain same forever, but in terms of the quality, okay, is the major issue. You can't consume all the water that you can come across your area or in your country and so on. So that is the issue. That's why, although in terms of the quantity is infinite, but unfortunately when it comes to consumption of potable water, okay, potable water is not infinite. It's a limited resource, and what is scaring is the volume of the potable water that human can consume with the accepted quality range is getting lesser and lesser over the time, and that is the alarming issue.
Okay, I'd like to write on that question to a question with Dr. Zaki, but before that, we are streaming live via Facebook as well as here on Zoom. So I would like to pose a question to participants, those who scared to drink water from the tap. So I don't even want to say water from the river, scared to drink water from the tap. Those in Zoom, please click the raise hand button. And those on Facebook, give a thumbs up. I want to see what is the reaction from the listeners. But on that note, Dr. Zaki, so I want to know, so Dr. Kali was talking about the quantity remains the same, but the quality have changed. I think that is absolutely true. We know that. We have seen that evidence. On the same note, I also feel the number of people taking that piece in the cake is increasing. If previously we have 10 users, now we have million users kind of situation. Jadi saya rasa jumlah pengguna is increasing, and so everyone is desperate to harvest the benefits of water. So here I would like to get your, I wouldn't say even feedback. From both of you, we don't get feedbacks, we get knowledge. I want to hear from your knowledge. Who are these users and beneficiaries? Who are the players who are sharing the water yang kita ada? Then what is their role and impact? Because I'm very sure some of them may be good and good. Some of them could be good and bad, right? So dia ambil tapi bila dia pulangkan semua keadaan lebih teruk. Some of them may be returning in a better way. So we would like to hear from you. Who are the users and beneficiaries? Who are these players? What are their role and impact?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Punita. Okay, before that, I'd like to clarify something. I'm no longer a UIA. Now I teach at several universities. Last semester I was in UTM. Inshallah, next semester I'll be in UTM. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So the mistake is mine. Yeah.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Before I see, I think I like to add a bit more to, before answering your question, I like to add a bit more to what Dr. Kali said just now about the water cycle. What Dr. Kali said was absolutely right, in terms of the evaporation, precipitation, and then the groundwater recharge, riverine, and all that. Yeah, that's what's and what you read and what he says is absolutely correct. Only that I like to add to what he's mentioned just now, because many of us somehow we don't truly appreciate our place in the water cycle. A lot of people don't appreciate that. You see, for example, when people say rivers or river basin, what do you mean by a river? A river is formed as a function of the water cycle. When it rains, when there's precipitation, that becomes a runoff, that becomes rivers. So what is a river? How does a river form? A river is simply the lowest point of gravity, where the water accumulates within a valley or within a catchment, right? So that's the lowest point. That's how rivers form. So that's what you mean by what. That's why you say water catchment, right? That's why you say why water catchment. Simply a river forms because that's where all the water flows from the hills and it accumulates at the lowest point of gravity. Now, why is this important to appreciate? This is important to appreciate because essentially most of us live in a river basin, and a lot of people don't appreciate this fact. The general public, especially, they don't get it. They see a river there, okay, that's a river. But they don't appreciate that we live in a river basin. So what we are we all of us 90% of the time, 90% probability you are located somewhere in the river basin if you're in Malaysia, most likely, unless you live in the coastal zone somewhere, and then maybe you're not in the river basin. But most likely you live somewhere in either in Klang Valley, you're either in the Klang River Basin, you're either in the Langat River Basin, or you're in the Selangor River Basin. So that's something that a lot of the general public, especially, they don't appreciate these facts. So in other words, why is it important to appreciate this fact? In other words, what it means is whatever activities that occur in the river basin, including how you live on in your daily lives, affects the water quality in the river. So that's very important. And whatever you throw to the drain, it eventually, as I said, it flows by gravity to the lowest point. It ends up in the river. So however you do it in your house, even if you throw something in front of your house into the drain, it flows to the river by gravity. And I think this is an important part that a lot of people don't get. Most likely that we stay in the river basin. So whatever, so because a lot of people don't understand hydrology, right? I mean, I don't blame them, because not everybody studies hydrology, right? Yeah, they don't understand that concept. So sometimes when I see the what I call this, the general public, the layman, they say sungai, and they say river, say, sungai dekat sana. They say the sungai is like such an alien concept to them. When this actually, you are actually staying within the river basin that contributes to the flow of that river. So whatever activities that's happening there contributes to the region. And I believe this is also the reason also I know, when you talk about the disruption incidents that happened last year, the river pollution incidents, the illegal discharges, when they throw their waste, some of them, of course, maybe they have heinous intent, maybe, but I'm pretty sure some of them also don't understand this concept. When they throw or they dump something illegally, they never in their mind, they think that it will end up going into the river, because they don't understand this concept. And I believe this is contributory. Yeah.
So, Doc, I think this is important thing to address. So here I want to make pesanan penaja. When you spray water on your porch, and then you just hose whatever on your porch down, you are not. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying every single person who does that, your face mask, which is now the most number of the solid waste yang boleh nampak merata-rata, all those things eventually ending up or contributing something to the water that you're drinking. Maybe you can put a bit more fear. Dr. Khalid, you agree with that? So personal
gravity. Absolutely, because it's by gravity. The river, the formation of the river is by gravity. It's the lowest point. So eventually it goes there, and a lot of people I think don't appreciate this concept, and this is why many of this is part of the reason why you have these pollution incidences that's happening. People don't understand the concept. Okay, now back to your question. Oh my God, miss. You asked me who are the users and the beneficiaries. Oh my God, this is such a broad-based question. When I first read this question, you can slice this in so many ways. You can slice this in so many ways. It's a very, very, very broad topic. I'm worried that if I try to provide you with an all-encompassing answer, it becomes too philosophical, but I will try. Essentially, it's like this. One of the ways for you to cut it is, everybody is a stakeholder. Everybody is a user, and everybody is a beneficiary. Okay, what does that mean? But if you were to try to zoom further, I would say that you would have the general public, the end user, who's one player, and then you have the institutional players or government players involved in water resource management. Now, without sounding too philosophical, who are the institutional players? As you know, if we talk about water resources, if you go back to the federal constitution, one of the main stakeholder is the state governments. because that is as per listed in the federal constitution. So the federal constitution says that water as a resource is under state purview. So they are definitely a major player. They are definitely a major player. The state itself and all the other entities that fall under the state. You have other entities that fall under the state. Okay? And then, of course, in services, Ms. Punita, you're from services background. So you have WASIA, you have the concurrent, you have the federal and the state roles under WASIA, certain review. So that's one way, that's another way of slicing it. You have the state players, the federal players that comes under institutional, and then of course you have the end users, okay? Now, another way of slicing it is that you, even in the water sector itself, in the water sector, when I say water sector, you have so many divisions. You have the water resource people who are involved in resource management. Water as a resource. We spoke just now about the water cycle, how you manage the water as a resource in Malaysia. Okay, that's one aspect of it. The quantity of water. And then you have the services. You have the people who are involved in the intake, treatment, and subsequent supply of water. One aspect of it, water supply, water services. So they are players as well that supplies water to the general public. That falls under a different, under WASIA. And then you have the wastewater, domestic wastewater treatment. Agencies like IWK, SPAN, who's looking into that. So water services, SPAN look into water services as well. But into treatment of wastewater. And now we are hearing a new thing that's happening now. Water reclamation, water reuse, where wastewater is going to be reclaimed and reused. And that's very interesting because based on whatever the info that I got now, I heard that that will come under federal purview, not under state purview, because there's going to be a new corporation that's going to be set up, right? Syarikat Air Negara, SAM, is going to utilize reclaimed water in conjunction with basically IWK treated water, and resupply that for non-potable use. So that's on the you have resource and then you supply. And then another side, you also have the environmental side, as Dr. Kali mentioned just now, the quality of water. A lot of people don't know this, but when you talk about, say, water quality monitoring, when it comes to quality monitoring, that purview actually comes under the Department of Environment, under DOE. It's not actually under JPS or under the water service providers. The National Monitoring Program, the Water Quality Monitoring Program, that's actually under DOE. That's under the EQMP, the Environmental Quality Monitoring Program. They have over 1,300 operations. So that's at the institutional side. You see, the institutional side that manages what I call is the whole water sector. And then of course you have, my God, we're going to be here all night. Probably to explain all the users. Right? And then we're going to be here all night.
We can have a separate marathon session. but today we have
then
to
of course you have
Go ahead.
Then you have the industries. Okay, sorry. Then you have the industries. Then you have the users. That's another segment. And the user, the end user. So those are the what I call these the players. The roles and impact, I mentioned a bit on the institutional side. The industries, of course, they use water for different purposes. They use it for industrial processes. You have water supply for domestic use. Some use for irrigation. That means for what I call this agricultural purposes. Some for aquatic, what I call this aquaculture. So you have many different kind of users. So maybe we can revisit the users later on. I don't want to take too much of your time. Okay, all right.
No, I think actually what Dr. Zaki said was really interesting because yes, you covered on the power and control, legislative and regulating, and also users. When it comes to users, personal use and business purposes, people who actually use it for personal consumption, one, but use it to make money out of it is another one. But I want to bring a question to Dr. Kali on this. See, when we hear, I mean, what Dr. I'm pretty sure what Dr. Zaki said is quite encompassing. Unless you want to add something on it, please do. But what I would like to ask from you is, we know that every single person has an impact, and they should have a motivation to understand and I mean recognize that river and the water and all those things. They should have a motivation. They need to have they must have a personal agenda to something good to be done to this entire structure of, we will talk about river management or resource management, river basin, IRWM, whatever it is, right? Whatever term that people call, eventually all of us are talking about one thing: how to make this, how to protect this zone and how to make it better. But it seems like people are so disengaged. They do not see them, like how to make people see that you are living in a river basin. I think if that happens, for example, I think if I'm not mistaken, we have like New Zealand championing, India has done it, New Zealand has done it, where they have recognized river as a life, a crime. It is considered a crime to pollute a river, you know, equivalent to how they prosecute someone if they kill a human being, right? So eventually, don't you think that's where we supposed to, do you think it's a good idea to go towards that, you know, to bring conversation on water and river to the dinner table?
Absolutely, you are right. Not only in New Zealand, but also in India, and so legal right, all these things. No, but before I go into detail, may I echo to what Dr. Zaki have mentioned about this issue, about this water cycle. What I spoke earlier was the theoretical water cycle, the basic which we taught. But currently, what in GEC we are actually revisiting that. In fact, we are telling the school to change the water cycle. It shouldn't be like what we thought earlier. It should be, this is the reality. If we see that this is we are part of the water cycle, we need to understand we are part of water cycle. So it's not water cycle alone, and you're observing and monitoring from far. We are part of the water cycle. That is the key message.
Correct. Exactly.
And whatever we do, whether knowingly or unknowingly, we are the culprit actually, or the beneficiary as well as the culprit, because we who caused the problem and we are impacted as well. But sometimes we always blame the rest without looking to ourselves. That's number one. Number two, echo to what Dr. Zaki mentioned about the stakeholders. I mean, he elaborated detail from the government, all this thing. But allow me to put in another angle, especially is related to the question that you asked. Who is the real stakeholder? Who is the beneficiary of water and river? So most of the time, even including myself, at one point, I always think the three sectors: government, private sectors, and public. Okay, it's just a matter of federal, state, or local government, all this thing. No, but when you go in detail, when you study the holistic water cycle, the beneficiary, whatever we mentioned here, is one category called man or human being. There's another two pillars of the beneficiary that have equal right or even more right to the water, which is flora and fauna. Dr. Zaki had mentioned that also. These are the important that we need to understand, that it's not only you have right for the water and access to the water, but also the flora and fauna. Okay, the plants and the dragonfly, the babies have equal right to live in the clean water, not only our babies. Okay, also the flora and the thing. So that's the second thing we like to understand, so that people need to understand that by polluting the river, it's not only we are disturbing our water supply, our own water supply through the water cycle, but also we deny the right of the flora and fauna, the babies of the fish, babies of the dragonfly, or even crabs, all these things. So we need to understand. So when you ask me how to bring this, our community, public, especially Malaysian, back to this, we need to reconnect them to the nature. See, those days, people really care for the river environment because they know their drinking water come from the river. Their fish come from the river. The food come from the garden and so on. But if you go around, ask our kids now, they say their drinking water come from tap. Okay, and the fish come from the hypermarket. All these things. Water recreational for us, river, waterfall. But now for them is a paid theme park and so on. So there is what we call disconnected from the nature. So one of the best thing or vital thing I believe Dr. Zaki also will emphasize that we need to reconnect people to the environment, to the river, and let nature do the work, because we cannot do the convincing, because once I go convince them, tomorrow another person will come and change them. So the people will really change. So now we need to anchor that by reconnecting them to the nature. So reconnect to the nature, bring back to the river, so that they know river is a living entity. As what you say about New Zealand, in fact, river is a living entity. So as a living entity, we human beings, which have sixth sense, greatest creation they call by God, but unfortunately, we don't see river as a living entity. So therefore, we don't care, we just dump everything. Do I dare to dump any pollution into our neighbor's house? No, because we know they will fight, because they are living entity. So we need to change our mindset that river is a living entity. He have equal right and equal access to the clean water and so on. So that is another message that we need to inform the public or young generation, that a river is a living entity. So therefore, it's our responsibility to take care the health of the river. So the characteristic of the living river, number one is river, it must have a voice of the stream. So all rivers, if it's healthy, it will have a voice, not only human being, also flora and fauna, and also water have the voice of the stream. And that's how we check whether the river is healthy or not. Second one is the base is not flat like a concrete channelized, but is a ripples and pools. And third one, river full of flora and fauna and not rubbish. That's what we can see now. And it must be colorless, not colorful, rainbow colors in the river, as what you and I come across sometimes and most of the times. Okay, so I think to answer that, put it in one line, our role here should be to reconnect them to the nature. Let they understand that they are part of the river basin system, and river as a living entity. So we need to take care of river, because river without any external pollution load, as a famous term for Dr. Zaki, the pollution load, river can look after herself.
Okay, I think I'm so glad, happy that you brought up that three pillars. You know, it's not just human, it's flora and fauna. So I think this is maybe something that we would like to expand further in our future panel discussion as well, because I think there's a lot of conversation need to go on, because a lot of focus always about strengthening institution, giving legislative powers and capital infrastructure. But the mindset where we are living further and further away from the river makes us disconnected with the river. That kind of initiative and activities are not there. So that is something that we really have to sort of like unbundle I believe should be another topic by itself. I would like to take a couple of questions. So Dr. Ching from CASA, thank you very much for joining us. So he has a question to the panelists. Either one of you can respond or both. He's saying that source to tap principle is no longer tenable in managing water. Water must be managed from source to source. I think he's talking about circularity here. So that's what I believe. So he would like to hear a response from both of you. I think just now Dr. Zaki did mention about that reclaim. So I guess that is one angle of source to source. So if any one of you have something to respond to this question. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. From source to source, I look at it from the quality point of view, and I've said this many times before. To me, the bigger question is, I mean, we have polluted rivers in Malaysia. That's no secret. I don't know whether you came in Utusan past couple of days about Kim River. What I call this was in Tucson, and then you have so many other polluted rivers in the country, and when you see these polluted river systems, always the inclination is to how do we improve the water quality, even in River of Life (ROL). How do we improve the water quality? And I've always said this, and you have certain parties, certain stakeholders. Certain parties coming coming to the forefront saying, okay, we're going to allocate a certain amount of money to do river cleanup, to clean all that, and that's fine. To me, that is absolutely fine. But I always look at it from a different angle, which is related on source to source. I prefer to talk more and put emphasis more on preservation, and I keep saying this many times before. How do you make sure that the river that is not too polluted now. It's not too polluted now. Class 2 river, maybe class 3 doesn't end up to be class 4 or class 5 or 10 years down the road. To me, that's the bigger question. And I mentioned this before because there's a source of water. And what perhaps I'll elaborate that a bit further. I've never elaborated this in anywhere else, but I'm going to elaborate here. Development in the river basin is continuous, it's always ongoing, and these developments require approval. And some of these developments have environmental assessment components related to them, in terms of pollution control, in terms of what they can, in terms of how they control the pollution and whatnot. But there are certain shortcomings in our regulation, even in our pollution control regulation, that despite meeting the requirements in the law, does not guarantee there won't be any pollution in the river basin. So if you have this ongoing development that's continuously happening, there's no guarantee that the river that's class 2 and class 3 now will remain class 2, class 3, 5, 10 years down the road. So to me, that's the bigger question. And the reason I like to talk about this is because rest assured, every other week, if you go to the offices of the authorities, there will be a new application for a new development that's coming. That's assured. Somewhere in the country. That's assured. And every time there's a new development coming, and I'm not just talking about residential or commercial development, I'm talking about industrial development as well. Some people get what I call this nervous with industrial developments happening upstream of water intakes, and I'm telling you there are. There are new upcoming developments happening in certain states in the country upstream of water intakes. Happening right now. So how do you make sure that with these new developments that's going to happen, how do you ensure the source of the water remains within acceptable status 5 or 10 years down the road? So to me, that's something that needs to be looked at. And what I've been talking about is, as we know, water as a resource, again, is under state purview. I don't know whether they're going to change the constitution or not. If they change the constitution, then there's a different story. But as of the moment, water as a resource is under state purview. So to me, in my mind, there's no way of achieving good water governance at the moment without state participation. There's no way. So the state has to be there. State has to be there, and they have to play an active role. Only that, from my observation now, is that the state agencies and state government have their strength in terms of they have the governing prowess as per enshrined in the constitution. But I think they have certain limitations in terms of resources, which the federal entities have. The federal entities have the resources and expertise. So the question is, how do you coalesce the two, and that can be mutually beneficial to both parties? That's to me that's the question that needs to be asked.
Okay, I would like to quickly take thank you, Dr. Zaki. I would like to quickly take a question by one of the participants. His name is James. Pretty tough question here, but I like the word stewardship. What he's saying is water operators take water from the rivers and make money selling it. What are their roles in water stewardship? It doesn't seem to be their problem as other agencies are supposed to have. It's a heavy question. So if you are both of you can kindly give your response to that, it'd be fantastic, because I think stewardship is a very huge term. And I personally don't think water operators are anywhere near, because their sole concern is feeding only one pillar, as quoting what Dr. Kali have mentioned, only one pillar, humans, not Farah, not Farna. But I would love to hear from both of you. What is your take? Dr. Kali, if you want to take it off first.
Okay, thank you to James Warren for the question. That obviously water stewardship is something that is a way forward. It's just a role. Which player play what role, but nevertheless we need to understand, as what Dr. Zakir mentioned, the limitation that we have. The water and land is a state matters. Okay, so we have to see two things: one, water resource, and water supply. So what the question is more about water supply. Operator is more on the water supply. So obviously there is a loophole about their responsibility. Should they also play key role to protect on the water resources, rather than just water supply? Because at the moment now, the focus is more on the water supply. So they extract water either from the river or from the direct from the dam, and then they treat and then they supply to the end user. So at the point now, but of course, people like us, GEC, environmentalists and NGO group, we always think that the people who are involved in the water supply also should be responsible to protect and also compensate the water abstraction and to protection there. So that is the gap is always there. Although most of the experts, even SPAN currently are looking into this issue, that operator have to play key role and also play a role beyond the treatment and supply, but to protect them. So what role they can play? Okay, how they can what you call enhance, empower the public to be the eyes and ears for them to monitor the water resources. So that is the operator role currently. They need to cannot run away from that responsibility. So for me, the question asked is rightly a timely manner, that the operators need to play a bigger role than within their niche of the business interest and so on. I'm not saying that operators are not paying to the state government, but what we are saying that it should go beyond that. No, they also have to see not only think the social obligation, not only the environmental obligation, the social obligation. They have to play that part too. Okay.
Yeah. That will be a tough call. So, Dr. Zaki, do you have your 2 cents on this water stewardship subject? Because
yeah.
Please.
Okay. Again, I look at it from as far as I'm looking at the way that the current institutional setup works. With regard to the water operators, they are only it's very limited with respect to component of stewardship that they can do at the moment in terms of governance. Because as an operator, as you mentioned just now, they're more interested in the business sector. So, but if I were to focus specifically on operations, what they can do to better improve their operations, if you look at it from that angle and you say that that's a component of water stewardship, then maybe that's something that they can do, going above and beyond what is required of them. For example, I give an example. In terms of water supply, the quality of raw water they are committed to achieve prior to supplying to the consumers must meet limits as per the Ministry of Health guidelines, MOH guidelines, the quality of water. Okay, and sure, I'm pretty sure they meet those criteria, which is wonderful, which is fine. In the event that they cannot meet, and as you know, then the plant has shut down, and we witness disruptions. But I would like to also perhaps they can play a more proactive role in looking at emerging contaminants beyond the MOH guidelines. That's already being discussed in first world countries. So this is to me where the operators can play their role in terms of stewardship of the quality of water. What can they, because there are certain emerging contaminants that's not part of the guidelines yet. PFOS, PFOA, that what all this is being discussed. The U.S. EPA, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, has prescribed a limit for PFOS, PFOA of 70 nanograms per liter last year, 70 nanograms as a guideline, and then now they're looking to enforce that guideline to that particular emerging pollutant. And then you have EDCs, endocrine disruptors, things like that, things that are beyond the conventional requirements, conventional water quality, guidelines that they need to meet as per the MOH criteria. So that's perhaps something that they can do, and they have the expertise to do it. I'm sure they do, because they are in the business. They're in the business of it, and this is something. And I think this is very important because not to sound very dreary, but many of our water intake points are located in the downstream areas where they are more susceptible to pollution, where there is an increased probability of this kind of emerging pollutants.
The thing is, Dr. Zaki and Dr. Kali, right? I feel when it comes to stewardship, it's not necessarily stewardship. I feel like more the conviction they have to say and do what is right. So, for example, GEC do not have any legal powers. You yourself as an individual do not have any legal powers. You do not sit under any list of concurrent or federal, right? But both of you guys are doing so much. So I feel like these corporate entities, if they want to do what is right, they can do it. I think a lot of it boils down to choice as well. But I quickly would like to draw you back into this conversation of water cycle, because again, I can see how humans are so entrenched into thinking everything revolves around their challenges, not knowing water cycle is beyond, far bigger. Water cycle will be there after human extinct as well. So let's draw back into this conversation. But prior to, before that, I just would like to address a couple of questions in the Q&A box. In relation to water disruption, the first series of panel discussion of 4 panel programs that we had are all talking about water disruption. So please feel free to go to Forum IE Malaysia website. There's a lot of conversation went on in the 4 panel discussions that we had under the first series in relation to water disruption. So we will not be able to cover that today. I will come to other questions later, but I quickly would like to go to Dr. Kali. If you can share a little bit in Malaysia when we talk about water resource that is taken up for consumption. Generally, we always talk about surface and underground water, but underground water is not something that we regularly talk about, even though there are conversation about if the river is not clean enough or is not sufficient, let me just dig a well and extract. So I would like to hear from you, because I did hear scary stories like Jakarta's being shifted to Kalimantan because the city is sinking as over abstraction of water. So what is your take on this? Can you share a little bit of your knowledge on expert advice on this subject?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Punita. Obviously, in Malaysia context, when we say main water source, obviously the first one is river through the tap water. Okay, so that's the thing that, and we know 97% of our potable water come from river. Okay, and the second one is the rain. Okay, rainwater, which is a neglected water resource in our country, because we receive 3,000 to 5,000 millimeter rain per annum, and we have so much water, but unfortunately we don't really tap into that, although politicians keep saying, rainwater harvesting should be mandatory for new housing area and so on. Whether developers have taken up that is another question, that may be different forum of this. The third one is surface water. Okay, and if you see that water from the drain, monsoon drain, every time would flood and so on. So that is another issue. And finally, the groundwater, as you mentioned, whether should we explore the option of the groundwater, but obviously this is my personal view, and also in GEC we strongly believe that we shouldn't tap into the groundwater at this point, because we have enough surface water, enough river water, all this is enough. There's only two things we should look into that now on the prevention of the river pollution from happening, pollution source, okay, control at the source. Number two, we also have to educate public and also user, whether industrial or the thing, on the demand management. We cannot keep increasing our production just because the demand increase. We need to manage, because if we see our water consumption is 226 liters per capita per day, compared to WHO recommendation is just 165. Malaysia boleh is always, exceeded the average of the thing. So that demand management is equally important. And the second one, I also want to share here, take this opportunity. When you look into the water abstraction from the river, the number one sector that used up our water, extract our river water, is agriculture. So if you look into that, almost 68% of the, 62% of the water abstraction from the river is for agriculture, followed by industry at 21% and domestic only 17%. So therefore, if you want to be smart, okay, if you want to work smart on the water conservation, on the water stewardship, when you say that what's the next level, what's the next phase for water stewardship, is not only talking about direct water, because most of the forum, most of the people only talk about direct water, that what is we consume. But there's another water which is virtual water, Maya, okay, virtual water, the indirect one also equally important. So we need to also balance the human's behavior, consumer behavior, that not only you are conserve, reduce, reduce the wastage and so on, but also look into your virtual water. So please look into your water footprint, because that is a very good tools to check and balance. So that people knows that when you check your water footprint, then you know whether you play your role accordingly or not. Because sometimes no point we are talking about I save water, I reduce my wastage, but on the other hand, we use high water footprint products, high water footprint foods, and so on. So we need to look into that.
I think Dr. Khalid, I think water footprint, I really want to dwell deeper on water footprint. But before that, you quoted rainwater harvesting. Can you give a short description what you mean by rainwater harvesting for the benefit of the viewers? Because we have a poll coming up later where the question is in relation to rainwater harvesting.
Okay, rainwater harvesting is basically Narim have come up with the protocol and so on. This is not something new. Okay, our ancestors, even my grandma and my mother have used to harvest the rainwater harvesting. So when I'm small, whenever there is a thunder, so immediately our role is to take the pail and go outside and catch the water. I think everyone has experienced it. So that is very important. And obviously, if you go to even now to Sabah and Sarawak, rainwater harvesting is something common among them. But unfortunately, in Peninsula, we need to have a forum and training in a hotel to teach people about the rainwater harvesting. So sad that we come to this.
But I think there's Dr. Khalid, I think there's a generation gap here. You see, my father, until today, at 70 over years, when it rains, first thing he does is put a pail to catch this rainwater. But I also think there's a gap. Something has gone missing. So I think rainwater harvesting, yeah, it's a nice word. Previously, we just use a pail. I mean, those days, right? Even now, some. But now we have technology that is built into it, so we do not really need to do all that process. It just get continuously done by itself. So
you can have the system. You can have a system currently. You know, the gutter, the roof gutter system, and then catch on the proper storage. And you can even, if you have filter, like in one of our center, we even use rainwater for potable usage as well. But we do have filter. We filter that, and also we use the rainwater harvesting for all the non-potable usage. We have so many communities under our, like example, water project, that community been supported with rainwater harvesting and use it that for the garden and washing their floor and so on. In fact, during the water crisis last year, you know, when we have a water shortage, a disruption there, in fact, some of our community in Desa Mentari, Block 3, and use rainwater as a substitute or as a water supply. It's happened. In fact, it came out in the newspaper also. No? So people need to understand rainwater harvesting is not something that exclusive to feel good factor, but actually it should be a standard practice, and it's supposed to be a normal way of living. As what previously people have used, but only thing last time the tools is different. Now we have a system, so you just have to hire and let the system do the work for us. So I think this way we call nature-based solution. So we need to expose our young generation about nature-based solution. So that is, for me, rainwater harvesting is one of the easiest and what you call simple science, how you and I can contribute to the span or water conservation in a residential area.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. Zaki, what is your take? Before I check, my question to you will be, when we look into the current water cycle, which now has been redesigned and bringing in all the complexities, one of the key features they actually look into when they're looking at rewriting this water cycle is the issue of scarcity and security. So would like you to unbundle what is scarcity, what is security. I know that many years back I posed this question, but I benefited solely, but I think today everyone should benefit from it. And before that, the move to Kalimantan, is it because Jakarta is sinking due to underground? So once you answer that question, let's go to scarcity and security. So because my question is if that is really legitimate, if it's really scientific and legitimate, we should be very careful tapping into our FDs, which should be left for a generation 100 years from now.
That's what I heard as well. I'm not sure whether it's fully valid or not, but that's what I heard as well. Is it possible for it to happen? Maybe it's not impossible. You know what's going on in the Netherlands, where they're building a lot of we call these structures over there, dikes and whatnot, because they're worried about climate change and rising sea levels over there. So actually, it's ironic. I'm talking about the Netherlands. I'm not sure about Jakarta, but Netherlands. It's ironic because they're facing that situation. Actually, the best water engineers they say are from Netherlands, because they are facing this problem, because they have to deal with it. Okay, on the water security and water scarcity. Okay, when you talk about scarcity, there's several.
These terms are so freely thrown. So I think people really need to understand what does it mean.
Okay. The way what I call this the UNDP the way it's defined by the UN, it's essentially like this. When you talk about scarcity, there are several different kinds of scarcity. One is you simply don't have a water resource for public supply. That's one form of scarcity. You just simply say, for example, there's not enough water resource for you to treat in order for you to meet the demand. Okay. Another kind of scarcity is you have the resource, but when you treat it, it's just simply too expensive. It's not feasible for the economy of scale over that region. So you may have the what I call this the resource, but it's too expensive. As we know, what I call this our neighbor our neighbor, Singapore, even in some Middle East countries, the technology that they're employing is advanced treatment technology, but the cost of treatment is very high. Thank goodness they are high income countries, they can afford it. But can you imagine if you deploy same kind of very costly treatment technology, and then you in Malaysia and then you sell the water at a premium price? How many people can afford? So that's another form. That's economic water scarcity. You see, so there are different kinds of water scarcity. Once you simply don't have the resource, the other is what I call is the economy. You may have the technology to treat the water, but this is just too costly. So that's another form of scarcity. Security. Wow, security. Okay, security. According to the what I call this. Again, the UNDP document on water security, there are several criteria which they talk about, they define water security, and that is, in essence, they say the capacity of a population to safeguard sustainable access to adequate quantities and acceptable quality of water for sustaining livelihoods, human well-being, blah blah blah. Very long definition. But in essence, it's like this. I'll try to summarize it because somebody asked me this question last time and I summarized the definition by the UN. Essentially, it's like this. When you talk about water security, you must ensure sufficient quantity of water and sufficient quality. Essentially, it falls under those two main categories for the different kinds of uses. The quantity and the quality. I think I don't have to tell you that in Malaysia, we have the abundance of rainfall, so we have enough quantity. But as Dr. Kali mentioned just now, the issue is the quality. Now, when it comes to quality, it relates to your question earlier. The quality of the water must be appropriate for certain kind of uses. So you have the quantity of water, and it must be purposeful for certain type of uses. I'm talking about raw water here. Now, according to our national standards, the uses that's classified in our national standards, there are two category of uses. One is the conservation for the natural environment. Two is for water supply. Three is for recreational use. Four is for irrigation. These are the main categories. So you need to have enough quantity and sufficient quality to fulfill these kind of uses. So roughly in Malaysia, that is what security more or less means.
Okay. So that is I think as simple as it can get, because really if you want to know the full
As simple as
definition and the content of, yeah, I feel like that's as simple as we can get what does security and scarcity mean, so that people do not actually use it interchangeably, because they're a very different meaning. So I have a last question for both of you panelists, but before that, let me just request all the participants in Zoom, unfortunately Facebook tak boleh, to respond to the poll questions that we have put up. There are 4 simple questions there. So there's a question here from, just give me a second, Dr. Ching. This is a very sensitive question, but up to both of you whether you want to respond. How best the Penang Kedah water saga can be best managed? Do we need a river basin authority to manage Muda river basin? If you're uncomfortable to respond, so you don't have to, but if you want to, please. Yes, go ahead.
I think this is a hot topic at the moment now. Interstate issue, Sungai Muda, and majority of the Sungai Muda is fall under the Kedah, where the downstream is in Penang. But of course, each player, for me, this is my personal view, although the facts remain facts, okay, that both parties have a right to claim and defend whatever they are saying at the moment now. Kedah said Penang should compensate for extracting water, and so and they put the volume into it and so on. But the most important is whenever there is a conflict between the state under the WASIA, the federal government should step in to moderate and then to invite both parties to discuss and find the ambiguous solution for this. And what in GEC, what we are saying that both parties should put people and environment before the political interests. So what I personally think currently, although there is some facts on the science and water distribution and so on, but sometimes the political interests interfere and overshadow the interests of people and the other economic activity. So don't only look into your ego within the state, but also protect interests of, there are so many players beside the public. There is a fisherman, and then the farmers and so on. So that is our take up. We say that it can be solved provided that both of them willing to solve for the interest of public, not for the political interest and so on. So that is my immediate response to your question.
Yeah, that is honest and most authentic. Can't get any more honest than that. Dr. Zaki, your take.
Okay, actually, I was posed this question a couple of weeks ago, getting the Penang Kedah Sungai Muda issue. I don't have a personal stand on it, but rather I have several questions when I think about it. Several questions that arise when I think about the issue. It's like this, basically. Now, understandably, Kedah wants to charge Penang for water because, as Dr. Kali mentioned, majority of the Muda Basin originates from Kedah. And there are some people that's with that, and of course there are other people that's not with that. But for the people that is with the Kedah side, saying that we need to charge you using the analogy of, say, Johor and Singapore. The energy of Johor and Singapore supplying water. You need the funds in order to maintain the Sungai Muda itself for ecosystem services, so called the ecosystem services to maintain the quality of water and whatnot within the Sungai Muda. So that is their justification. That's why they want to charge Penang side, which is, I think, is a logical argument. It's a logical argument to saying that now they're just Penang is getting the water, and Kedah is not really it's not a very rich state, so to speak. So they need to explore their resources in order to develop. So now they're saying that you can't do that because we need to maintain the water quality of Sungai Muda. So Penang may need to charge something, need to pay something to Kedah. Okay, that's on one side of it. Okay, that makes sense. But then again, if that's the argument, what about how will that affect other interstate water supply schemes and water transfers? And does the mechanism once you charge, once they pay, and to translate that to catchment preservation for the other state, does that mechanism really exist at the moment? And the reason I'm raising this question is because within recent months, everybody knows, within recent months, I was asked to give my opinion regarding this development in Bentong, Pahang, which is upstream of the Pahang-Selangor water transfer.
Okay.
Upstream of the Pahang-Selangor water transfer. So we know that Pahang is supplying water to Selangor, and Selangor is paying Pahang for the water. Okay, paying Pahang for the water. But yet, the development that I'm talking about is still happening in Singapore. It's still happening. And it is industrial development.
Okay.
Mind you, it is an industrial development. So it doesn't mean that you may have the mechanism to charge. You say, but does it really get translated to catchment preservation? That's another question. You see, that needs to be asked. So that's my point of view. Fully understand all the arguments. Everybody, they have their points. Both sides have their points. But how do you translate that into something that is meaningful and tangible in terms of catchment preservation? So that's my question on the issue.
Ms.
So
Rita,
that
maybe
will
can I add into that? I think
please.
if we can look at the payment for ecosystem services, there's another tools to justify why Penang and Kedah have legal right because the source from there. But what we are saying that it can be solved. So put the political differences aside and look interest of public thing. So I'm not saying Perak have no right, Kedah no right to charge. They have under the payment for ecosystem services because every services need to be paid. Similarly on that, but only thing is they need to sit down and discuss rather than argue on the in front of media and get popularity. That is what the key thing here. Okay.
Probably that is the motivation, Dr. Kali. So I guess that's the best response the panelists can give. So last question is from Badul Luang. He have a question, if either one of you can take. Bolehkah kawasan catchment area yang diwartakan 2001 dan masih di dalam water pada lebih kurang 2013 dibangunkan dengan ladang kelapa sawit? Adakah ia salah di sisi undang-undang? Adakah pengguna berhak membawa hal ini ke peringkat atasan? Aduan telah dibuat beberapa kali, tetapi tiada jawapan. Adakah provisional lease dapat mengatasi pewartaan catchment tersebut? So that's the question. If you be able to respond to this, I think this is a bit on legislative related matter, whether the catchment that has been gazetted, if a development takes place within, does we as beneficiary of that catchment has the right to bring this matter up or challenge this development? Merujuk kepada Tatau catchment di Sarawak. So the person has given a specific river catchment. Is it something that either one of you will be able to respond? Because I understand this is a legal part of it.
Okay, obviously I have no knowledge on the particular Tatau catchment in Sarawak. I have no knowledge on that, but I just respond general thing based on the scenario he described that some other bila ada penguartaan, okay, water catchment, gazetting and so on. Whether once the area being gazetted under whether it's being gazetted at the forest reserve or as a water catchment, or is it under both gazetting thing there. So normally once it's gazetted, it cannot be open up for any commercial activities. No. But unfortunately, we are not very sure unless our friend is aware that it's not been de-gazetted. Because sometimes very easy in Malaysia, sometimes the area can be de-gazetted. I have come across with a certain few scenario where even agency is not aware how the de-gazettement happen, but it do happen in our country there. So I think the best thing for this particular person, Encik Awang, to check whether legal status, whether the area been de-gazetted or not. If it's not de-gazetted properly, legally, and then they shouldn't, okay, allow any I think plantation lah kelapa sawit dibangunkan di kawasan itu. Whether they have right to take this to the court, yes, they do have. If it's not been gazetted, but I'm not there to answer that because I don't know the actual scenario of that particular. Whether they have a legal right, yes, as a custodian or the beneficiary, you do have if it's still gazetted. Okay, so that is my I'm unable to give detail because I don't know the actual scenario.
Thank you, Dr. Kali. So whether it's gazetted or de-gazetted, Dr. Kali has given some response. So Jabadul did mention it's masih dalam gazette. So by right, we do have, so probably it can be a case study if someone who are within the basin or within that catchment can actually bring the matter up. Dr. Zaki, do you have anything to add on this?
Mind you, a plantation can be categorized as a forest plantation.
In Malaysia.
I know the law. Ah.
Oh my
Mind
God.
you, a forest can be categorized as a forest plantation, huh? Mind you, under the law. That's all I have to say about that. I'm not going to say
Okay,
more than
Badrul,
that.
I'm sorry.
Uh,
I'm sorry that there's something else must be changed before you can do anything. So anyway, we have come to the end of our session. So I would like to pose this question to both of you. As an individual, what can I do to create my small change? So how do I know that I am not becoming the problem for the motorcycle? I'm doing something that is in favor of motorcycle in long term. So as an individual, what can I do? So I would, especially from Dr. Kali, right? I would love if you can, I know that GC have done this water footprint calculator, and you did mention about, I would like to feel good also. For instance, you said that per capita 226. My personal consumption is 327. So it's far, far higher. But I tend to think that I'm a careful water user, yet that is my consumption. So, and my consumption is neat in a sense that I work from home. So mine is not distributed between home and elsewhere. So it's 100% that's my consumption. But I would like to know, net, if I bring in this water footprint that direct and indirect, which is virtual, then I can be satisfied that in totality, I'm doing something good. So for both of you, as an individual, what can I do to create a small change, reduce my water footprint, and bring that balance into motorcycles?
Okay, thank you. I'll start first. I think the first thing is, as I mentioned, that we need to reconnect ourselves to the nature. Then only you will appreciate. Because why? Then you will start to love and value the water. I think the World Water Day today is valuing the water. So then only will happen. The first thing, I think each of us in Malaysia, we need to know the river address. What's the river's name in flowing backyard? Second, where your drinking water come from? Believe me, majority of them, they don't know where their drinking water come from. Sometimes you live in a basin A, but your water come from basin B. For example, in PJ, you live in a Klang River basin, but your drinking water come from the Selangor River basin. So that's the second one. And third one is when you flush your toilet, you also need to know where it ends up, in the which treatment plant, because after that it still go back to the river. So that's one. I think you need to reconnect yourself to the nature by knowing your river address. That's number one. Number two, you and I have to be careful when it comes to water conservation. Number one, try to reduce the wastage. And study shows that almost 60% of the wastage happen in bathroom and toilets. So we need to look into that, whether can we install water saving gadgets. And when people heard water saving gadget, does it mean I have to invest a lot of money? The answer is no. Some of the gadget is FOC. Okay, you just take the empty water bottle, fill up with the sand, and put it in the flush toilet. So you reduce the volume. Each flush reduced by 1 liter or 2 liters based on the size of the bottle you put. Second, you can install water timber. It's a very cheap. It's less than RM1, the actual cost. And then you put at the head, shower head, and then it reduce because it increase the pressure and reduce the volume. So there are so many simple yet effective. Because our study shows using water timber will reduce 18 liters water usage per day per capita, per household, sorry. 18 liters per day per household. Our study shows in PJ area. And the other one is maybe we should also look into the alternative water supply, the rainwater, and then previously our mothers and grandmoms all reuse the water, which now we don't use. Okay, so that is the one. And the other one is, please, obviously I shouldn't mention this because I'm an NGO, but for the benefit of the environmental thing, if after all SPAN or government say they want to increase the water tariff, please support, because what we are paying is peanuts. And this is a basic need. We are willing to pay hundreds of RM for telecommunication, entertainment. But for the basic need, water, if you are talking about increase the bit, people take, because they say this is a basic need of human. Yes, water is there, but for treatment is very costly. If it is the Apex and Copex, our current tariff is too low. even though I'm NGO, I say that we need to look into that so that people will appreciate and value the water. What's the value for water? Okay, these are some of
Thank
the
you.
simple steps you can do. And finally, you can even do your water auditing. That's a simple way you can audit your water usage, because previously, before I do, I thought I'm so good. I'm careful, but until you quantify in terms of the numbers, then only you know how good you are. Are you good or really, or you pretend? You shock sendiri. You know, sometimes you feel good without really contributing. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kali. A good one. Dr. Zaki. As an individual, what I can do to create the change?
I'm often contacted by many parties who are concerned about the rivers where, the rivers where near where they live. And they always express their concern. I guess that's the first step, to be concerned about it. To be concerned about it and to be concerned about the implications, about the developments that's going on within, adjacent to the rivers, as Dr. Kali mentioned just now, near the river address. For example, now, there's some new sources of pollution that's happening in Langat Basin. I'm sure you're going to hear about it in the coming days, most likely, because and that action was actually brought forward by the locals, by the people there in Langat Basin itself. Because they care about what's going on, what's transpiring in the river. So they actually, contacted the authorities. Even if you look on Facebook, they tagged the minister, they tagged what I call this DID, LUAS, DOE, by just ensuring concern and questioning. Why is this, development potentially high risk development that's happening in that region? So you, I mean, if these people can do it, these are, how shall we say, these are people like you and I, even like you and I, even the normal guy on the street, the normal guy, the normal person, a normal person that's just, that doesn't know about water quality. And you'll be surprised, when they talk to me, when they ask me about water quality, and I see they are asking me about very, very scientific questions. I'm very surprised. They're asking about biocides. I think biocides, wow. They're asking about all this because that stems from them caring. That stems from them caring about what's going on in their river basin. So that's what you can do. Continue. What I'm trying to say in summary is you can continue to ask these questions. We have so many platforms nowadays. We have Facebook. We have what I call Instagram, LinkedIn. If there is certain development that may potentially be affecting the rivers within your vicinity, you can alert the authorities. You can highlight it in social media of pollution incidents. Be the eyes and ears, of the authorities. Help, work with them, because there's no way when when you have the pollution disruption incident that happened last year, they say they want to enhance more. You know how big a river basin is? You expect the enforcement officer to be in the river basin 7 days, 7 days a week. It's almost impossible. Even they are doing it now. I kesian tengok orang. Now if you go to the LUAS, the authorities, LUAS, they are there on site, essentially roaming and monitoring the river basin 24/7. It's very hard job. So, but still, even that, they cannot be there 24/7. So, you need to care and you need to ambil tahu what's going on in your river basin. If there's something that you feel that is not right, please highlight it to all these various channels. Nowadays, we have many channels. So this is to me how you can play a role, and that has been actually quite effective, I think. With social media. With social media has been very effective. Been very effective. Sometimes you get instantaneous reply. Instantaneous reply from the authorities or the powers that be. That's my point of view. And in addition to whatever Dr. Kali mentioned just now. Okay? All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Zaki and Dr. Kali. So I hope more people will be joining and listening, not just conversation under Let's Talk Water. There's plenty of agencies and as well as NGOs, CSOs, individuals who are having this conversation. So I just hope that whoever listening right now, be inspired, be conscious, be aware. At the huge high level, like what Dr. Zaki said, the responsibility is for all of us to become the mata-mata, the eyes, the ears, and the mouth for these agencies to report, despite sometimes it may not give you the results that you are expecting. Please do that, but at the same time, welfare starts at home. So after that, self-audit and see whether are you part of the problem or part of the solution, and do that simple step that Dr. Kali have suggested. So this is, I guess, a good summary for our session, first panel discussion in the second series. Thank you very much for participating until 10 o'clock in the evening. Our next panel discussion under this series will be deterioration of water resources on 4th May. So do join us. And with that, thank you very much and have a great night. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you.